A Tale of a Muslim Girl and Her Infidel Lover. A novel by Dr. A. Ahmed. This is an intriguing epic story which resonates with love, resilience, courage, and sacrifice. Before we dive into the tapestry of the story, I would like to inform the reader that this novel is narrated in 3 books. Book 2. The Muslim Apostate Girl and Her Christian Infidel Lover. Copyrights. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer, who may quote brief paragraphs for a review to be printed in a public newspaper, general magazine, school journal, or university article. This novel is a work of fiction, but the entire story is based on the real life of a Muslim girl in Sudan. All names, characters, places, and events are either the product of the author's imagination or used literary. Any resemblance to actual people, living or dead, events, or locales is merely coincidental. Chapter 37. The first speech of the Muslim apostate girl on the scandalous married life of the Prophet Muhammad. The 4 speeches of the Sudanese girl Dr. Ibtihal, which she delivered at the Sudanese Students' Club and in the University of Athens, in short time, became the best-selling in DVD and CD. Some publishing companies requested her to give them permission to translate her speeches in Greek, Arabic, and French languages and sell them besides English. The Muslim apostate girl Dr. Ibtihal had gladly accepted the offer and acquiesced for the translation of her 4 controversial speeches. Some of those companies paid her money in advance. She also receives periodically the amounts of the royalties on the sale of her so-called provocative recordings. She began to gain fame and name so quickly in Athens. Some Christian churches requested her to come and share her testimony during their Sunday services. In a short time, the speaker Ibtihal had become exceedingly famous and loved among the Christian churches and the Athenian society. However, not everyone was happy about her success and fame. Some Muslim university professors and students published articles in their Arabic and English newspapers and condemned her by name. They considered her 4 speeches were provocative and insulting to Muslims and damaging to the aromatic biography of their holy prophet Muhammad. They also accused her of being an opportunist speaker, an impostor girl who uses religion to gain fame and material gains. They wrote that she had never been a Muslim woman before. They claimed she was born and brought up as a Sudanese Christian. Some writers stated that Dr. Ibtihal is a Sudanese Christian woman from Darfur province, others located her origin to the Nuba Mountains, and yet others related her to some Denka and Azanda tribes from the south of Sudan. Some said she is an Ethiopian Christian woman who was born and brought up in eastern Sudan in a city called Gadaref. They mentioned that city because it is located exactly at the Sudanese-Ethiopian border and has more Eritreans and Ethiopians than Sudanese. The Muslim apostate girl Dr. Ibtihal received life threats from some terrorists through her email and apartment's address. Though she submitted those life threats to the Greek police, still the Athenian police was not able to locate the senders of those anonymous letters. Then the Muslim community in Athens had written directly to the parliament and demanded that the Greek government should intervene and stop the dissident Sudanese woman Ibtihal Taha al-Amin from constantly and openly attacking Islam, the Prophet Muhammad, and Muslims. This complaint was made after the Muslim apostate girl Dr. Ibtihal had delivered a series of controversial speeches in the biggest church in Athens and spoke about the life of the Prophet Muhammad. She had delivered her so-called provocative speeches in the auditorium of the Apostolic Church on Sunday evenings. The government of Greece had referred the Muslim community's complaint to an Athenian criminal court. Before we mention what the court had ruled regarding this religious dispute, we must find out what the Sudanese Muslim apostate girl Dr. Ibtihal had said in her so-called controversial and provocative speeches. Brothers and sisters, thus began the Muslim apostate Dr. Ibtihal in charming feminine voice her first speech in the biggest church in Athens, I don't hate Muslims. I just want my brothers and sisters in humanity to know that whatever I speak about Islam is not my own creation. These teachings and stories are there in the most authentic books of the Islamic heritage, which are called the mothers of the Islamic books. Everything I had mentioned, I supported by quotations from the Al-Azhar Al-Sharif University's approved Islamic sources. Let any Muslim scholar proves just one single hadith or story that I said about the Prophet Muhammad was my own invention or creation. Every Muslim scholar learns these teachings and stories in school and college. Why then do Muslims get annoyed when other people hear them? Why do Muslim scholars call these stories about the life of the Prophet Muhammad, Amskut Anho? That means those stories and teachings are not supposed for any Muslim scholar, religious teacher, or imam of a mosque to talk about them or mention them to outsiders. Because they are problematic, Muslims and non-Muslims are not supposed to hear them. Therefore, Muslim scholars and leaders are to be silent about them, and no one should know those stories and teachings about the Prophet Muhammad because they are problematic and scandalous. Despite such restriction, today I am going to open the Pandora's box and unleash that silent history of Islam. Accordingly, in this evening, I am going to speak about the hidden married life of the Prophet Muhammad. The married life of Muhammad puzzled many Muslim and non-Muslim scholars in our modern day. One of the main obligations of each Muslim writer is to justify the polygamous marriages of the Prophet. It is one of the main duties of every Muslim to imitate the example of the Prophet of Islam in every area of his life. For that reason, modern Muslim writers try always to find reasons to justify the marriages of the Prophet Muhammad. The commonly accepted reason is that the infallible messenger of Allah married women from different tribes for tribal alliances. The example of the Prophet of Islam in every area of his life. For that reason, modern Muslim writers try always to find reasons to justify the marriages of the Prophet Muhammad. The commonly accepted reason is that the infallible messenger of Allah married women from different tribes for tribal alliances. The Moroccan Muslim scholar Fatima Mernissi rejected the assumption that most of the Prophet's marriages were done for the purpose of tribal alliances. Fatima Mernissi, 1987, page 54. She argued that most of the Prophet's marriages were motivated by the sexual attraction and her beauty. Examples of his marriages with Safiya bint Huyay, who was a Jewish girl, Muhammad had raided her tribe and murdered her husband, Rayhana bint Shamun, another Jewish slave, Maria the Copt, a Christian girl, given as a gift by the king of Egypt to the Prophet Muhammad, Jawariya bint al-Harith. She was so beautiful that whoever saw her fell in love with her, Zainab bint Gahash, another scandalous marriage, because she was the wife of his adopted son Zayd, and Aisha, the daughter of the second caliph, Abu Bakr al-Siddiq, yet another problematic marriage because he married her when she was 6 years old, and had sex with her when she became 9. Muhammad was 54 and Aisha was 9 when they married and sexually consummated their marriage. The Prophet wrote the marriage contract with Aisha while she was 6 years old and consummated his marriage with her while she was 9 years old, and she remained with him for 9 years, till his death. Sahih al-Bukhari, Book 62, Hadith number 89. The Egyptian Muslim scholar Rashid Rida admitted that he did not find any reason or wisdom behind the marriage of the Prophet to Maimuna bint al-Harith, who was his last wife. Cited by Dagger, 2002. Page number 2. If we included his first wife Khadija in the list of his wives, we would find that out of his 13 wives, 8 of them were married for reasons other than what the scholars claimed for tribal alliance. The Prophet praised the son of his daughter Fatima, Hassan ibn Ali, because Hassan was a marriage addict. (1987), page 50. The Prophet was caught by his wife Hafsa in her house, while he was committing adultery with his maidservant Maria, who was a Coptic Christian girl. When Hafsa saw the Prophet in the bed with his slave, she shouted angrily, "O Prophet of God, in my house, in my bed, and in my night." Fatima Mernisai, 1987, page 55. Aisha, who was the beloved wife of the Prophet, confessed that she hated the other wives of Muhammad and in some cases quarreled with them verbally and physically. One day she approached the Prophet with food in her hands. She found his wife, Sauda bint Zama'eh, with him. She said to her, "Eat before I cover your face with the food." When Sawada did not respond, Aisha threw the food on her face. The Prophet laughed and told Sauda to do the same thing to Aisha, citing Al-Sabag, 1981, page number 117. The Moroccan professor Fatima Mernisai quoted two sayings of Aisha, in which she admitted that polygamy brings hatred and jealousy between the rival Muslim wives. Mernisai, 1987, page 55. Aisha said, "I never was as jealous as I was of Maria the Copt. That was because she was an exceptionally beautiful, curly-haired girl. The Prophet was very attracted to her. In the beginning, she was living near us and the Prophet spent entire days and nights with her until we protested, and she became frightened." Also, Aisha said, "The Prophet was in my room when the girl Juwairiya came to ask him about a contract. By God, I hated her when I saw her coming towards him. I knew that he was going to see what I saw." She meant her remarkable beauty. The Prophet admitted that polygamy harms the first Muslim wife. When he came to know that his son-in-law, Ali ibn Abi Talib, was intended to marry another woman, he stood in the mosque at the Friday public prayer and said, "I will not allow Ali ibn Abi Talib, and I repeat, I will not allow Ali to marry another woman except if he divorces my daughter Fatima. She is part of me, and what harms her, harms me." Mernisai, 1987, page 70. Muslim historians and narrators of the Prophet Muhammad's biography differed in the number of women that he married. Some narrators mentioned 9 wives, while others put their number to 13. Hers put their number to 13. All the narrators of the Sirah of the Prophet Muhammad mentioned he used to have 2 slaves, and he slept with them without marriage. They were the Christian maid Maria the Copt, and Rayhana bint Shamun. She was a Jewish slave. In her first speech, at the Athenian Apostolic Church, the Muslim apostate Dr. Ibtihal spoke first about her testimony of her conversion from Islam to Christianity, before she spoke briefly about the scandalous married life of the Prophet Muhammad. After that, she promised her Christian audience, she will speak in detail in 2 speeches on 2 consecutive Sunday evenings about those problematic marriages of the founder of Islam. Chapter 38. The second speech of the Muslim apostate girl Ibtihal on the scandalous marriages of the Prophet Muhammad. Brothers and sisters, yesterday, I spoke about the married life of the Prophet Muhammad in general. Today, I would like to speak about some problematic marriages of the founder of Islam. The marriages of the Prophet Muhammad with some of his women are called by some scholars scandalous marriages. By this they mean his problematic relations with some of his women, his marriages to Aisha, the daughter of his friend and first caliph, Abu Bakr, Zainab bint Jahash. She was his cousin and the wife of his adopted son, Zayd, Safiya bint Hoya, a Jewish captive girl, and Maria the Copt, a Christian maidservant, given to him as a gift by the king of Egypt. The first scandalous relation was with Maria the Copt, who was not counted by Muslim scholars as one of the wives of the Prophet, who are called the mothers of the faithful Muslims. Before his death, Muhammad condemned all his wives to the life of celibacy forever. To prevent Muslim men from marrying any one of his wives, after his death the selfish Prophet called them the mothers of all Muslims. No man could marry his mother. Aisha was 18 years old when her husband Muhammad died, and she remained unmarried until she died at the age of 64. Maria the Copt remained a Christian and slave until her death. She bore him a son, Ibrahim, who died in infancy. The Prophet's desire for Maria was described in a dramatic way by the books of the Sirah. Described in a dramatic way by the books of the Sirah. Hafsa, one of the Prophet's wives, had caught him having sexual intercourse with Maria in her room. "O Prophet of God, in my house, in my bed, and in my night," she shouted angrily when she saw her Prophet completely was bare while climbing the naked body of her maidservant. Afraid of the anger of his other wives, and especially of his most beloved wife Aisha, he promised Hafsa he would never touch Maria again if she could keep the matter top secret. But she spoke out, and the matter reached the ears of Aisha. When Aisha confronted him, he claimed to have received a revelation from heaven which justified and legalized his action with Maria. "O Prophet, why do you hold to be forbidden that which Allah has made lawful to you? Thou seekest to please thy consorts, but Allah is often forgiving, most merciful." Surah Al-Tahrim 66, verse 1. When Aisha heard the above justification, she said to him, "Why do I see your God in a haste to satisfy your whims?" The maidservant Maria became pregnant and delivered a baby boy. The Prophet gave him the name Ibrahim. When Aisha saw the baby that the Christian maidservant Maria, the Copt, had delivered, she told the Prophet that the child did not resemble him. Then a rumor reached the Prophet's ears that Maria was in fact became pregnant by the man who had brought her from Egypt, and that Ibrahim was not his own son. Muhammad was outraged and sent Ali to strike off the neck of the man. But the man could escape the death penalty when it appeared that he was not capable of having sexual intercourse, because he was a eunuch and his penis was cut off. Sahih Muslim, Hadith number 4975. But as we shall see later, Muhammad did not follow the same principle when his beloved Aisha was accused of having sex with Safwan ibn al-Mu'addal. His second scandalous relationship was with Safiya bint Huyayy. She was the daughter of a Jewish leader, and her husband was a leader too. When Muhammad invaded the Jewish city of Khaybar, he killed Safiya's husband, father, and uncle. Her husband was Kanana bin al-Rabi'a, whom the Prophet tortured to death and extracted from him the hiding place of his treasure and unjustly robbed his wealth. Invaded the Jewish city of Khaybar, he killed Safiya's husband, father, and uncle. Her husband was Kanana bin al-Rabi'a, whom the Prophet tortured to death and extracted from him the hiding place of his treasure and unjustly robbed his wealth. In the beginning, Safiya was taken as captive slave by Daya al-Kalib. When the news reached the Prophet's ears that Safiya was extremely beautiful and the daughter of a Jewish leader, he took her from Daya. On the same day, he killed her husband, brother, and uncle. The Prophet forced her to sleep with him. One could imagine how the woman would feel toward the man who killed her close relatives and forced her to sleep with him. No doubt about it that Safiya was crying when the Prophet raped her on the same night. He killed her husband and brother and all her people. Safiya reported having said, "I have never hated any man more than the Prophet because he killed my husband, father, and all my people." The Prophet needed someone handy that day to protect him, because Safiya might kill him for revenge on the first night he forced her in bed. The Sirah al-Halabiyah of the Prophet tells us that when the Messenger of Allah emerged out of the tent in the morning, there was a sword with Abu Ayyub. Abu Ayyub said, "O Messenger of Allah, she was a newly married woman, and you killed her father, brother, and husband, so I did not feel secure about you with her." The story of Safiya was mentioned in detail in Al-Sirah al-Halabiyah, Ibn Hisham, and Tabaqat ibn Sa'd. The Prophet violated the verse of the Quran, which said the woman whose husband died, or her spouse has divorced her should remain without marriage for 3 months, and 10 days before another man sleeps with her. The Quran says, "Whoever from amongst you dies and leaves behind wives, the wives will hold themselves from marriage for 3 months and 10 days. Surah Al-Baqarah 2, verse 234, and Surah Al-Talaq 65, verse 4. The Prophet Muhammad should have waited for 3 months and 10 days before he slept with Safiya to know whether she was pregnant from her late husband. The Islamic sources stated that Safiya became a Muslim later, and the Prophet married her. Inab bint Gahash. The marriage of Zainab was described by Fatima Mernisai as scandalous marriage because she was the wife of the Prophet's adopted son, Zayd. Because she was the wife of Muhammad's adopted son, in the eyes of the Arabs, as good as his own daughter-in-law. Muhammad went to her house when her husband Zayd was away, saw her in a state of semi-nudeness, lusted after her, and was sexually aroused. According to the biography of Muhammad, God sent a wind, which lifted up the curtain of the tent, and Muhammad saw Zainab lying in her bed while she was half naked. Zainab was described by the biographers of the Sirah of the Prophet Muhammad as white, beautiful, and having very sexy body. When her husband Zayd heard about the visit of his father Muhammad and his desire for his wife Zainab, he offered to divorce her for him. But Muhammad, fearing a public scandal, told him to keep his wife for himself. At this point, Allah spoke and decided on the matter. Surah Al-Ahzab 33, verses 36 to 40. Allah sent a revelation from heaven in which he blamed Muhammad for telling Zayd, "Retain thou in wedlock thy wife," and for hiding in his heart that which God was about to make manifest. Allah told Muhammad, "Thou feared the people, but it is more fitting that thou should fear God," and he revealed his plan, present and future, to Muhammad thus: "We joined her in marriage to thee, that in future there may be no difficulty to the believers in the matter of marriage with the wives of their adopted sons when the latter have dissolved with the necessary formality their marriage with them. And Allah's command must be fulfilled." Surah Al-Ahzab 33, verses 36 to 40. Allah then addressed the Muslims of all generations: "It is not fitting for a believer, man or woman, when a matter has been decided by God and His Apostle, to have any option about their decision. If anyone disobeys God and His Apostle, he is indeed clearly on a wrong path." D also was exempted from the restriction of the Quran that a man should marry only 4 women at a time. In other words, the Prophet alone was allowed to have any number of wives, and that was why he married 13 wives at the same time, and he had 2 slaves, Maria and Rehana. The alleged prophet of God, Muhammad, made his son Zayd himself go to his wife with his marriage betrothal. Allah's messenger said to Zayd, "Go and make mention to Zainab as a wife to me." Imagine that the selfish prophet Muhammad at that time, he had many wives, and his son had only 1 wife, and he took her from him. Anas narrated, when the legal period of Zainab bint Jahash was finished, the messenger of God said to Zayd ibn Haritha, "I have none that I can trust, other than myself, but you. Go to Zainab and propose to her for me." So Zayd went off and came to her while she was leavening dough. Zayd said, "When I saw her, she became greater in heart, and I could not look at her since I knew that the messenger of God had mentioned her. So I turned my back on her. O Zainab, rejoice, the messenger of God wants to marry you." She said, "I shall do nothing until I ask the advice of my Lord." She rose up and went to pray. Then the verse was revealed, "Once Zayd has accomplished his purpose with her, we married her off to you." Then the messenger of God came and entered without permission. The 4th scandalous relation was with Aisha bint Abu Bakr. She was Muhammad's 3rd wife. Aisha narrated, "The messenger of God married me in Shawwal in the 10th year after of his prophethood, 3 years before the migration, as I was 6 years old. I was 9 years old when he consummated the marriage with me." Ibn Hisham holds that Muhammad married her when she was 7 years old and consummated the marriage with her when they were in Medina, when she was 9 years old. Aisha narrated, "The messenger of God married me when I was still playing with the girls. I did not know that the messenger of God married me until my mother took me and locked me up in the house. Then I realized that I was a married girl." Aisha also said, "I was playing with the girls during the lifetime of the messenger of God." D. The messenger of God came to me when I was playing with the girls and asked me, "What is this, Aisha?" I said, "The horses of Solomon." He laughed. "I would be playing with my dolls," narrated Aisha, "with some girls who were my friends, and the Prophet would come in, and they would slip out of the house, and he would go out after them and bring them back, for he was pleased for my sake to have them there. Sometimes he would say, "Stay where you are," before they had time to leave, and would also join in our games. Playing with dolls and similar images is forbidden, but it was allowed for Aisha at that time, as she was a little girl, not yet reaching the age of puberty. Fateh al-Bari, Volume 13, page 143. These narrations tell us that the Prophet Muhammad married Aisha when she was a child of 9 years old. So no Muslim scholar would be able to deny this obvious fact. Based on the example of the Prophet Muhammad with Aisha, the minimum age for marriage in the Sharia law was not fixed to a specific age. It was left to the guardian of the girl to decide which age to give his daughter in marriage. In Surah Al-Talaq, verse 4, the Quran allows the father of the girl to give her in marriage before she has her monthly period. For example, according to Sudanese law, the minimum age for a girl to get married is 10 years. The Prophet married Malika bint Ka'b, who was known for her resplendent, magnificent beauty. Aisha entered to her and said, "Are you not ashamed of marrying the killer of your father?" So Malika took refuge with God from the Prophet, and he divorced her. Tabaqat ibn Sa'd, Volume 8, page 141, Asad al-Ghaba, Volume 5, page 525. Aisha noticed that whenever the Prophet Muhammad wanted to sleep with a woman, he claimed that Allah revealed to him a verse and justified his action. In this regard, she sarcastically remarked, "It seems to me that your Lord hastens to satisfy your whims." Sahih Muslim, Volume 2, pages 748 to 749. It was not clear on what occasion Aisha made such a doubtful remark. Other sources related it to his scandalous marriage with his cousin Zainab bint Jahash, the wife of his adopted son Zayd. Aisha was accused of having a secret love affair with a handsome young man by the name of Safwan. To hide her affair, she said he was a eunuch. One might want to know, how did she knew he was a eunuch? Maybe Aisha saw him without a penis when he was urinating in the desert, or while he was swimming naked in a mirage. Or did she see his penis was cut when she spent 2 nights all alone with him in the desert? Instead of ordering the killing of the man as he did in the case of Maria's boyfriend, Muhammad claimed Allah sent a verse and justified Aisha. Those who accused her were given 80 lashes each. Chapter 39. The speech of the Muslim apostate girl Ibtihal on the forbidden to reveal stories about the hidden life of the Prophet Muhammad. Among all the 3 controversial speeches that the Sudanese apostate girl Dr. Ibtihal delivered at the Apostolic Church in Athens, this speech annoyed the Muslim community in Athens the most. In this speech, the Muslim apostate girl mentioned some stories about the Prophet Muhammad that only some Muslim scholars know about them. The ordinary Muslims know nothing about those hidden stories. Therefore, her third speech was considered by the Muslim community in Athens as an unjustified attack on the beautiful and aromatic seerah, or biography of their infallible prophet. To silence her from spreading those groundless stories about their holy prophet, the Muslims of Athens collectively signed a complaint and sent it to the Athenian parliament. As we know, the parliament considered such a dispute should be dealt with at a court of law. Therefore, it forwarded the petition of the Athenian Muslim community to the Criminal Court of Athens. Dr. Ibtihal referred in her third speech to the life of the Prophet Muhammad, when he tried several times to commit suicide because the angel Gabriel stopped visiting him and revealing the words of Allah to him. She also referred to the time when a Jewish man cast spells on Muhammad and made him totally become madman for 1 year. She also mentioned that the Prophet Muhammad died of poison that he ate from a portion of food in the house of his Jewish wife Safiya bint Huyayy. She further mentioned that the Prophet Muhammad claimed to have received a command from Allah to teach his female followers the breastfeeding of adult males. Those stories like that of satanic verses that Muhammad received from the devil were unknown to many Muslims. They were hidden in the authentic books of Islam and in the minds of some Muslim scholars. They were not supposed to be told to anyone in public or private. Unearthing them by the Muslim apostate girl Dr. Ibtihal made Muslims in Athens extremely outrageous, and led them to demand the immediate intervention of the Athenian parliament. Before we see what the Greek court had decided, we must hear what the controversial speaker had mentioned in her final speech in the Apostolic Church. Brothers and sisters, I would like to speak tonight about some stories and teachings about the Prophet Muhammad which are not known to many Muslims today. I read those stories and teachings from the most authentic Islamic books that my father brought with him when he returned from Egypt. By the way, my late Muslim father graduated from Al-Azhar Al-Sharif University in Cairo. He had 2 bachelor's certificates and 2 master's degrees from the prestigious University of the Islamic world. He also obtained his doctorate in Sharia from the same university. When I read those stories and teachings, I was quite puzzled about them, and in my heart believed none of them. I thought, how our infallible prophet could experience such things. Being a young Muslim girl and full of zeal and love for my holy prophet and religion at that time, I just ignored them. Even so, they were stored in the back of my memory and time could not erase them. He was in a cave in a mountain on the outskirts of Makkah city. Even so, they were stored in the back of my memory and time could not erase them. The first story I would like to begin with was related to the first vision that the Prophet Muhammad saw when he was in a cave in a mountain on the outskirts of Makkah city. The story tells us that he was frightened by the vision he saw in the cave of Hira. He immediately ran to his first wife Khadijah and asked her to cover him with clothes. He thought what appeared to him in the cave was a satanic creature of a sort, but Khadijah somehow assured him that he saw an angel and not a demon. Then she took him to her cousin, Waraka ibn Nawfal, who confirmed her words. Until this point, every Muslim knows this story. However, what I am about to quote is not known to millions of Muslims today. But after a few days the old man Waraka ibn Nawfal died, and the divine inspiration was also paused for a while, and the Prophet became so sad, as we have heard, that he intended several times to throw himself from the tops of high mountains, and every time he went up the top of a mountain to throw himself down, Gabriel would appear before him and say, "O Muhammad, you are indeed Allah's apostle in truth," whereupon his heart would be quiet, and he would calm down and go to his house. And whenever the period of the coming of the inspiration used to become long, he would do as before, but when he used to reach the top of a mountain, Gabriel would appear before him and say to him that he had said before. Sahih al-Bukhari, Volume 9, Hadith number 111. Al-Tabari narrated the suicidal attempts of the Prophet differently. The Prophet Muhammad said, "Now none of God's creatures was more hateful to me than an ecstatic poet, or a moon possessed by the devil. I could not even look at them. I thought, woe is me, a poet, or a moon possessed by a genie. Never shall Quraysh say this of me. I will go to the top of the mountain, and throw myself down, that I may kill myself and gain rest." So I went forth to do so, and then when I was midway on the mountain, I heard a voice from heaven saying, "O Muhammad, thou art the apostle of God, and I am Gabriel." Al-Tabari, Volume 9, page 167. There is no prophet in the Holy Bible who tried to commit suicide. I don't believe God would put his prophet in such a desperate and helpless situation. God spoke through all his prophets in the Old and New Testaments, but none of them felt the way Muhammad felt. It is hard to believe that the angel of God would force his message on the prophet of God the way Gabriel did with Muhammad. Aisha narrated, the angel came to him and asked him to read. The prophet replied, "I do not know how to read." The prophet added, "The angel caught me forcefully and pressed me so hard that I could not bear it any more. He then released me and asked me again to read, and I replied, 'I do not know how to read.' whereupon he caught me again, and pressed me a second time till I could not bear it any more. He then released me and asked me again to read, but again I replied, I do not know how to read, or, what shall I read? Thereupon he caught me for the third time and pressed me and then released me and said, Read, in the name of your Lord, who has created all that exists. Has created man from a clot. Read, and your Lord is most generous, up to that which he knew not. Sahih al-Bukhari, Volume 9, Book 87, Hadith number 111. Can anyone believe that the same Gabriel who appeared to the Virgin Mary in the New Testament was the same Gabriel that appeared to Muhammad in the cave of Hira? The angel Gabriel appeared to Mary and gave her the message of God. He did not force the message of God on her, but Gabriel of Muhammad forced him to accept his message until the latter felt he was going to kill him. Muhammad became suicidal for a period of 3 years after Gabriel appeared to him. For such a long period of time, he was not sure whether he was a soothsayer, possessed by demons, or a messenger of God. During this period many times, he said to himself, I will go to the top of the mountain and throw myself down that I may kill myself and gain rest. Al-Tabari, quoting from Sirat Rasul Allah by Ibn Ishaq. Muhammad also suspected that he became mad. O Khadija, I see light and hear sounds, and I fear I am madman. Al-Tabaqat al-Kobra by Ibn Sa'd. Aisha continued to narrate, Then Allah's apostle returned with God's inspiration, his neck muscles twitching with terror till he entered upon Khadija and said, Cover me. Cover me. They covered him till his fear was over, and then he said, O Khadija, what is wrong with me? He returned with God's inspiration, his neck muscles twitching with terror till he entered upon Khadija and said, Cover me. Cover me. They covered him till his fear was over, and then he said, O Khadija, what is wrong with me? Then he told her everything that had happened and said, I fear that something may happen to me. Sahih al-Bukhari, Volume 9, Book 87, Hadith number 111. No prophet of God in the Bible had been controlled by the power of magic. However, a Jewish man cast spells on Muhammad and controlled him for over 3 months. According to Aisha, magic was worked on Allah's apostle so that he used to think that he had sexual relations with his wives while he actually had not. Then one day he said, O Aisha, do you know that Allah has instructed me concerning the matter I asked him about? 2 men came to me, and one of them sat near my head, and the other sat near my feet. The first one asked the other, What is wrong with this man? The latter replied, The man is under the effect of magic. The first one asked, Who has worked magic on him? The other replied, Labid ibn al-Asam, a man from Bani Zurayq who was an ally of the Jews and was a hypocrite. The first one asked, What material did he use? The other replied, With a comb, and the hair stuck to it. The first one asked, Where is that? The other replied, In a skin of pollen of a male date palm tree kept under a stone in the well of Darwin. So the Prophet went to that well and took out those things and said, That was the well which was shown to me in a dream. Its water looked like the infusion of henna leaves, and its date palm trees looked like the heads of devils. The Prophet added, Then that thing was taken out. Al-Bukhari, Volume 7, Hadith number 660. The kind of magic that worked on Muhammad was described by one of the Prophet's companions as the worst one. Arwa related that Aisha said, The Messenger of Allah, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, was bewitched so that he would imagine that he had had intercourse with his wives when he had not. Sufyan said, This is the worst type of magic when it does that. Sahih al-Bukhari, the Book of Medicine, Chapter 79. His head due to that powerful magic. The Messenger of God, may Allah bless him and give him peace, had a Jewish servant boy. The Jews approached him and kept after him until he gave them some fallen hair from the Prophet, Allah blesses him, and gives him peace, as well as a few teeth from his comb. The Jews used these to cast a spell of black magic on him. The person who was behind this was the Jew Labid ibn al-Assam. He then put the hair in a well belonging to Banu Zurayq called Darwan. The messenger of Allah, Allah bless him and give him peace, fell ill for a period of 6 months, during which the hair of his head fell off. He imagined that he had sex with his wives when he did not and was withering away without knowing the reason. Asbab Nuzul, Surah Al-Falaq 113, verses 1-5 by Ali ibn Ahmed al-Wahidi. Muhammad was also poisoned by a Jewish girl called Zainab bint al-Harith. She poisoned the alleged prophet of God as revenge for what he did to her people. When the apostle of Allah conquered the Jewish Khyber city, and he had some peace of mind, Zainab bint al-Harith inquired from her girlfriends, which part of the goat is liked by Muhammad. They said, the foreleg. Then, she slaughtered one from her goats and roasted it, the meat. She wanted a poison that could not fail. The apostle of Allah took the goat's foreleg, a piece of which he put into his mouth. Bishr took another big bone, and put it into his mouth. When the apostle of Allah ate one morsel of it, Bishr ate his, and other people also ate from it. Then the apostle of Allah said, hold back your hands. Because this foreleg informed me that it is poisoned. Thereupon Bishr said, by him who has made you great, I discovered it from the morsel I took. Nothing prevented me from emitting it out, but the idea that I did not like to make your food without relishing it to you. When you had eaten what was in your mouth, I did not like to save my life after yours, and I also thought you would not have eaten it if there was something wrong. Bishr did not rise from his seat, but his color changed to that of Talsin, which means a green cloth. The apostle of Allah sent for Zainab and said to her, what induced you to do what you have done? Of Talsin, which means a green cloth. The apostle of Allah sent for Zainab and said to her, what induced you to do what you have done? She replied, you have done to my people what you have done. You have killed my father, my uncle, and my husband, so I said to myself, if you are a prophet, the foreleg will inform you, and others have said, if you are a king, we will get rid of you. The apostle of Allah lived after these 3 years till, as a consequence of his pain, he passed away. During his illness, he used to say, I did not cease to find the effect of the poisoned morsel. I took it Khyber, and I suffered several times from its effect, but now I feel the hour has come of the cutting of my jugular vein. Al-Tabaqat al-Kobra, Ibn Sa'd pages 251-252. It was clear that the Jewish girl, Zainab bint al-Harith, wanted to kill Muhammad as revenge for killing her father, uncle, and husband. Muslim historians and biographers tried to show that the food informed Muhammad that it was poisoned. Moreover, they made the Jewish girl Zainab say, if you are a prophet, the foreleg will inform you, and others have said, if you are a king, we will get rid of you. But the incident of poisoning Muhammad and its consequences did not support any claim to supernatural intervention. First of all, Muhammad tested the morsel, and the poison entered his body and eventually caused his death. The apostle of Allah lived after this 3 years till in consequence of his pain he passed away. Secondly, his companion Bishr also knew the food was poisoned from its taste. Thirdly, Bishr died at the spot. Fourth, if the Prophet knew that the food was poisoned, why didn't he stop his companion Bishr from eating it? Or at least, if he was truly the Prophet of God as he claimed, he should have raised his friend from the dead as Jesus did to his friend Lazarus. By the way, Muhammad was the only prophet in human history who had never performed any miracle in his life or uttered one single prophecy to authenticate his claim to prophethood. Brothers and sisters, I would like to conclude my third and last speech in this blessed church by referring to the Egyptian Muslim scholar, Dr. Sayyid Mahmud al-Kimni. He said that Zainab bint al-Harith was executed immediately. and last speech in this blessed church by referring to the Egyptian Muslim scholar, Dr. Sayyid Mahmud al-Kimni. He said that Zainab bint al-Harith was executed immediately. The poison remained in the body of the Prophet for 3 years until it finally caused his death. Al-Kimni, The Wars of the Prophet State, page number 454, quoting from Ibn Kathir, page number 211. Al-Kimni also mentioned that some Muslim historians and commentators believed that their prophet died as a martyr because he was killed by a Jewish woman. Al-Kimni, The Wars of the Prophet State, quoting from Ibn Kathir, page number 216.